Hey all, here are OS Reviews. Today we're taking a quick look at the Alpha and Delta Novas. These are a pair of TWS wireless buds from a Singapore-based brand that we actually first saw around 2016-2017 when this entire category of wireless TWS style headphones were still brand new to the market and kind of the first gen AirPods had just come out. Of course, over the past few years, the market has become saturated with more and more competition, making the cost of wireless buds much more affordable, but also making it incredibly difficult to compete in this space. But it's good to see that this brand is still around, and again, the Novas being some of their newest pairs have this interesting transparent look going on that is perhaps a little bit inspired by the Nothing buds. These are ANC wireless headphones as well, so they will reduce some ambient noise as you're wearing it. For example, in a car or if you're in a subway, it's using a pretty up-to-date Bluetooth 5.3 chip, although using just the standard audio codecs of SBC and AAC, so you won't necessarily get hi-fi certification on here if they had gone with an LDAC or an aptX lossless capable chip instead. But these are relatively affordable as a result, selling for under $45, and they also have a low latency mode that you can be used if you're gaming. Battery will last upwards of 6 hours of continuous music listening, and then with the case you'll get an extra 2 to 3 top-ups, providing around 18 hours or so of music playback before you have to recharge it again. So that's about average, I would say, but certainly not bad. One thing that Alpha and Delta seemingly don't have though at the moment would be a companion app, which we are also seeing more and more often these days. And some of their other catalog products, by the way, are more rooted in IEMs or in-ear monitors, which offer more of that hi-fi quality when it comes to audio reproduction. So perhaps that's why some of their wireless buds, by contrast, are just going to be a little bit more straightforward, since it started more as a hardware brand, I would say. So anyways, packaging here is quite simple and just tout some of the features that we mentioned there down below. You can use them in either a mono or stereo mode. Otherwise, opening up the box, we have also a peek of the design, some final packaging contents including a standard USB Type-C charging cable, a quick user guide, and some spare silicone tips to get a more snug fit. So a closer look here at the design, although again the transparent look is similar to some of the Nothing products currently available, the shape of the case is going to be a little bit different. It's more boxy and rectangular on these, although the acrylic plastic again makes it see-through and doesn't feel shabby when it comes to the overall build. That being said, the back here doesn't have any Qi wireless charging support on the case, so you can't really pop it onto a charging mat per se, but again, the price kind of reflects that as well. Now, opening up the hinge, they will automatically turn on and start to pair with your device, so there's a sensor built on in there, which is relatively fast. The side here does feature just a simple Type-C port for charging, and then the buds are magnetically held into place. You can also tell some of the circuitry down below here as well, which I think does make it look quite cool, especially if you're a fan of that cyberpunk see-through design. It does look, I think, quite good. Now, otherwise, they're easy to pop out, and the buds themselves have a Alpha and Delta logo there on the front. They are touch sensitive, and because there is no companion app, thankfully you can control everything you would possibly need on these already, including changing the volume higher or lower just by tapping once on the left and the right sides. You can double tap as well to play pause your music, tap 4 times on the left or right side to skip tracks, tapping 3 times will cycle through the ANC versus the audio transparency mode, which uses the microphones to amplify the sound around you, kind of like hearing aids, so you can be aware of what's happening without popping these out. You can long hold on the right side for 2 seconds to enter a low latency gaming mode, and the left side 2 seconds to activate the voice assistant, which is compatible with iOS and Android devices. So they're very fully stacked when it comes to controls. Everything you would possibly want are already baked on in, again including volume, which is good to see. Some additional microphones, and aside from the interesting texture work here, that we can see the circuitry board, the tiny little battery, as well as the microcontroller here on the side of the PCB. The soft silicone tips here again can be removed to switch into other sizes, although the mesh here is just made out of a simple fabric as opposed to metal like on some more flagship grade buds we've seen in the past. And because they are quite lightweight, it doesn't really weigh you down as you are wearing them for longer listening sessions. Still feel quite comfortable and ergonomic as a whole. Even if you're doing a little bit of light movement, including walking as well as jogging, it still mostly stayed in place. The sound profile as a whole was also quite good and energetic. There is a nice hint of bass, so if you're listening to a drum beat or a kick from EDM or pop music, it definitely comes through. leaving you feeling pretty satisfied if you're using them for workouts, for example, getting sufficiently loud as well. And again, for smaller buds in general, I felt like the level of bass here was satisfactory, especially as a single driver pair without losing too much details in the mids and trebles, and it doesn't really overpower those segments at the end of the day. It sounded clean and crisp enough as a pair of budget buds that overall I was fairly satisfied just for some casual music listening. Ultimately, what's good is despite the cheap price, the sound here is definitely not cheap. It definitely has a little bit more of fullness to it than I really expected. Again, good volume output, not too thin sounding either, even at higher volume levels, doesn't distort too significantly, again for single driver buds, but they are tuned quite well by Alpha and Delta. Although if you are, again, a super discerning audiophile per se, then of course you can pay more and get even higher quality reproduction with more drivers as well as a higher Bluetooth chipset, but still quite stable, good performance at the end of the day. Now when it comes to the active noise cancellation, it also performed just a little bit better than I was expecting. Again, it reaches up to 30 decibels of sound, which gets repressed, but that's mostly lower frequency engine noises. If you are talking, for example, someone nearby, you can still kind of hear that slightly creep in. But I'd argue that's more of a limitation of this type of tech as opposed to the Novas per se, which perform fine when it comes to just riding in a car, even in a flight. You'll be able to listen to music without having to turn the volume quite as high and do a fair job there of, again, engine sounds, fan noises getting slightly repressed. The transparency mode was also relatively well optimized, so indeed it didn't sound too sharp, shrill, or overly loud in terms of the amplification, nor was it too quiet, so it did also decent enough jobs, again similar to AirPods, if you are using it in that particular profile. So as a whole, I would say the sound here slightly punches above its weight, although I would argue that the Novas are still more of a design-centric pair of buds. If, again, you're a fan of this transparent type of look, then it is quite a cool aesthetic, I have to admit, especially in this kind of geeky, cyberpunk type of vibe which is going on. That being said, they're not the most fully feature-stacked, aside from getting the basics done, including good audio, decent battery life, as well as, again, having active noise cancellation and good controls, but there is no companion app, as aforementioned, nor is the audio codec and drivers on here technically the highest spec that we've ever seen. But ultimately, it's a good pair of basic wireless buds for 2024 at a relatively affordable entry-level price range. So you can check out more details if you're interested in the links down below. For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the Alpha and Delta Novas.